ਸਪਾਈਸ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋ ਸੀ ਗੁਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਮ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੀ ਖੇਲੀ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਹੈ ਐਨੀ ਓਹਾਨਾ, ਨਸਲ ਦਾ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਕਾਰਕੁਨ ਵੀ ਅਤੇ ਟੀਚਰ ਵੀ। ਇੱਕ ਅਜਿਹੀ ਅਧਿਆਪਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਨਸਲੀ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਜੱਦੋ ਜਹਿਦਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੱਲੀਆਂ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਚੰਗੀ ਨਿਗਾਹ ਰੱਖਦੀ ਆ ਔਰ ਨਸਲਵਾਦ 'ਤੇ ਚੰਗੀ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਪਕੜ ਹੈ। 4 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ ਦਾ ਦਿਨ ਬੜਾ ਅਹਿਮ ਸੀ। 4 ਅਪ੍ਰੈਲ ਨੂੰ 1968 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰਟਿਨ ਲੂਥਰ ਕਿੰਗ ਜੂਨੀਅਰ, ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡੇ ਕੱਦ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਿਆਹ ਨਸਲ ਦੇ ਆਗੂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੱਤਿਆ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਗੋਰੇ ਨਸਲਵਾਦੀਆਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ, ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਰਸੀ ਦੇ ਮੌਕੇ 'ਤੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਦੇ ਮੌਕੇ 'ਤੇ ਐਨੀ ਓਹਾਨਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰੇਗੀ ਕਿ ਮਾਰਟਿਨ ਲੂਥਰ ਕਿੰਗ ਜੂਨੀਅਰ ਕੌਣ ਸਨ, ਕੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਣ ਸੀ, ਕਿਉਂ ਕਤਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਅੱਜ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਕਿਉਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ, ਵਗੈਰਾ ਵਗੈਰਾ। ਐਨੀ, ਥੈਂਕਸ ਫॉर joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. So, Annie, what can you briefly tell us about Martin Luther King Jr. and his early life?
Yeah, so, it's a very timely topic. I don't know if people are aware, in the media right now with Trump's arraignment, there's the picture of his arrest has been put forward as this idea of like, oh, look at people championing their rights and Trump is being maligned and, the hero of the movement. So we're seeing right now that Martin Luther King Jr. is being besmirched, is being exploited in a very particular way by right-wing groups that would have never supported any of his ideas to begin with.
Absolutely.
So I think we need to set the record straight that Martin Luther King Jr. fought for the civil rights of all Americans, but especially Black Americans, the right to vote, the right to assemble. I mean, the list goes on and on. That he was so much more radical than what people often say. That yes, he was for nonviolence, but he also realized that like the economic system needed to change, that capitalism was a problem, and he was against the Vietnam War, and there were so many ways that he was such a progressive and radical voice. And yet what's happened over the years, he's become a little bit of this like free-floating, figure of just like non-violence, and people just kind of use him as this idea that, you shouldn't really rock the boat. But in fact, he was like the master, boat rocker, right? He absolutely fought. He was terribly young. He was assassinated at 39 years old. But also a bit of a genius. He went to university at only 15 years old. So a man who fought really his entire life, and really brought together a movement of nonviolence that really changed American society forever. But I just think at this time his name seems to have lost some meaning, unfortunately.
Right.
And I think it's very important that we remember who he was at the root.
Absolutely. Now, what can you tell us about the circumstances that led to his assassination?
Yeah, so I think you can imagine when somebody goes against the government, and especially at a time when, you had, the end of World War II, and then segregation, Jim Crow laws, you have the reality of the Vietnam War. I mean, America was in turmoil. And so what you have was the FBI and other policing forces that absolutely followed Martin Luther King Jr. He faced endless threats from white supremacy of all kinds. House bombings, death threats, all kinds of things. And so, the reality is that he was a targeted man always. And I guess there is some conspiracy out there about who ended up shooting him and why. But certainly, as he was going to the White House, right, to talk to President Lyndon B. Johnson and to get that work done, this is a time period where John F. Kennedy is assassinated, Malcolm X is assassinated, right, RFK Jr. would be assassinated. It was a time when anybody that dared speak out would face that level of violence. So it was done by one man. But as much as that one person, Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm so sorry, I have the wrong name. In any case, the gentleman that did it, as much as he was white supremacist and all of that, I do think that Martin Luther King Jr. There was a much wider, vaster conspiracy to take him down.
Well, whoever may be the hitman and whoever be the conspirator behind all this, what does this say about the complicity of white supremacy that refuses to die even today?
Oh, 100%. And I think his words, one of his most famous remarks about the reality of being disappointed in the white moderates, right, as he sat in a jail cell in Birmingham and wrote those words. And that reality that the reason why he ended up dying so young, was murdered so young, wasn't just because of the KKK or, some assassin, but rather that America and the moderate white population was unwilling to give up that power, that privilege, that really needed to happen. That for Black people to fight endlessly for their rights in such a way, it did not come easily. And people often weren't willing to see beyond a certain step. And I think that's very true today. That we see BIPOC people continuing to fight for their rights, continuing to see levels of oppression and policies that try to take it away, and white populations still vote for policies that do harm. Right? So they might say, oh, no, I don't believe in slavery, or I believe people should have the right to vote, or, oh, yeah, I think it's wrong, police brutality is bad. And yet they still continue following policies and programs and ways of governing that absolutely do damage. I mean, look at who we elect to our houses, our Congress, our parliaments, right? How many of those people continue to believe in policies that do harm? So it's a very performative reality, and that has not changed.
Certainly not. Now, he was not only a towering leader of the civil rights movement, as you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
He was also vocal against Vietnam War and economical injustice. In your understanding, what should be considered as his true legacy?
Ooh, I really do want to believe his true legacy is, the speech he gave the night before he died. And that was a true repudiation of capitalism, of the processes that led to the Vietnam War. He was supporting a garbage strike, right, at the time. And I think that's his true legacy. I think he was looking at completely transforming systems of power. And that doesn't take away from everything else he did. But I think the reason that we erase that part of him shows you how powerful that part of him was, right? Because people don't want others to know that MLK Jr. actually was that far in that direction, right? Of how radical he truly was. So to me, that's his legacy, and I think it's something we need to bring out more. We need to talk about more. Of course, the civil rights and everything, all of that, is part of that legacy. But he saw way beyond that, right. And I don't think he considered the right to vote the end to justice. Right? He didn't consider these small steps as a true, Black, empowerment. And I mean, again, he supported everybody. But that idea that somehow just the right to vote would end the legacy of slavery and enslavement and genocide that had occurred to BIPOC people on those lands. Right? So the fact that we try to erase that part of him is exactly what we need to focus on now.
So since you are an anti-racism educator, I really want to know, I'm really curious to know, Annie, how much influence his story had on you?
Immense. I happened to go to high school in the southern United States, in Florida. And so I was lucky to have very good educators, several of them BIPOC folk, that really brought to light the story of Martin Luther King Jr. And so, throughout my life, seeing that as a guiding light, and especially the radical components, right? My family comes from a war zone, right? We come from an area where battling for your rights is commonplace. And to see what he did was supremely important. And then as an educator, I want my students to understand that at the end of the day, fighting for your rights, you can't just hurt other people, right? You can't just inflict trauma and violence upon others in an attempt to get your rights. That is problematic. So the fact that he took the nonviolent path, the fact that he was able to be in so many rooms, the fact that he was willing to really sacrifice himself and the countless of others that stood by him, right? Women included, right? We sometimes forget the Black women who really led the movement as well. Rustin Baynard, a gay man, right, who helped him, organize the March to Washington. All these individuals, their legacy, their dedication to, really bringing forward peace for all and doing so in a way that lifted up rather than pushed down is what I take as an anti-racism educator. That I want people to know they should fight for their rights, they can fight for their rights, and there are ways to do it where we don't have to harm other people and become, the new oppressor. right? Like the idea to liberate all. And I think the way he was trying to do it was in a way that helps liberate all. But he had that mind, right? He was able to see that. Not everybody can see that, and that's okay, right? We're all different people. But the reality that he understood that nonviolence was that way to go, I think is supremely powerful. And that, again, anti-racism is not just about someone calling you the N-word, right? It's not just about the right to vote, that we have to look at all of our systems and we have to realize that they are racist, and how we undo those systems, from our economic systems to all of our systems, we need to look at those really deeply. So that's what I've learned, and I do my best to bring that messaging forward to my students.
Absolutely. Well, Annie, it was nice talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything I didn't ask you before I let you go?
No, just happy that we're bringing it up, because I saw those images the other day as Trump was being arraigned, and I really felt sick about it. And I think, on this anniversary of his assassination, the fact that we need to really reinstall Martin Luther King Jr. as the true radical that he was.
Absolutely. Take care, Annie.
Thank
Talk to
you
again.
so
Bye
much.
for now.
All right, bye.
ਦੋਸਤੋ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਅਖੀਰਲੀ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਐਨੀ ਓਹਾਨਾ, ਜਿਸ ਨੇ ਮਾਰਟਿਨ ਲੂਥਰ ਕਿੰਗ ਜੂਨੀਅਰ ਦੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਦਿਨ ਦੇ ਮੌਕੇ 'ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ। ਮੇਰੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਹੁਣ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ ਈਵਨਿੰਗ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਵਿੱਚ। ਆ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਹੈਵ ਅ ਨਾਈਸ ਡੇ।